Okay, so I want to give you a little bit of introduction to Mishle, how I came to start giving shirim on this, and there's a new Sefer coming out. What's that all about? I was very close for 18 years to Rav Shlomo Brevda Zatzal. I was once listening to a tape, and he said as following. He said, it's impossible to have any success in fighting the Yetzer if you don't learn Mishle with the Gra, right? And he said it like very powerfully. It really hit home. I said, like, I got to do this like right away. And it was close to midnight, and I realized something. I said, wait a second, why doesn't, if it's so important, why isn't everybody learning it? Everybody's learning Shmir Salashin. That's very popular today because you have to stop speaking Lashon Hara. But if you can't fight the Yetzer without learning Mishle, why is it like there should be tens of thousands of copies? Every base measure should be, it's open, and every seminar you go to, they should be teaching it, but no one's learning it. So I realized something which is quite profound, is that it must be the Yetzer stopping everybody from doing it, right? And if the Yetzer is stopping everyone from doing it, and now I'm inspired, but then I'm going to go to sleep, I'm going to wake up in the morning, I'm not going to want to learn Mishle. So it was midnight, I decided I have to start right now, this second, or else the Yetzer will use all of its forces to stop me. I went to my neighbor, his name is Gersha Unger, and I knocked on the door at midnight, he was up, and said, we got to start right now, this is an emergency.
12 o'clock at night.
What? At 12 o'clock at night, yeah. And well,
Assignment.
he's also up at 3 and 4 in the morning. We're like slow sleepers. But anyway, but that was about 30 years ago, maybe even more. And since then we were learning, we learned the whole, yeah, here in Mishle, right, in Hara. Right. Switched to Journey Way. Right, the office on there. Um, But after I finished it twice, I realized, okay, so now I could fight the Yetzer. What about everyone else? That's why I decided to give shirim, and I must have recorded, I don't know, 400 or 500 shirim already on Shabbos. Right. Most of the time, it's been for ladies. I gave my call as well. I gave in the yeshiva. I was mashkiach, Baruch Kushalevsky's yeshiva for a while, and I recording them. Except, in fact, since Tiny Time started, Tony's Time thing started 20 years ago, I think. It's been 20 years. I was one of the first speakers because the person who started davening the shul, my parents daven, he came up to me and he said, we have this new idea at Tiny Time. We're going to put shirim on the internet. I said, no. At the time, like it wasn't popular internet. I said, okay, I'll go along with it. I started, so for 20 years, I've been recording these Mishle shirim. And about 3 months ago, I get an email from someone in Switzerland. He says, want to take your shirim and turn them into a book. Okay, very nice. So we could do it with AI. And he kept bothering and hacking more letters. And finally I said, you know what? Let's do it with Mishle. Let's see. Last week I said, give me a sample. And I think I sent it out, the first pasuk, and it came out amazing. Like AI is just really, it's an incredible thing. I mean, it looks like it's going to destroy the world. And I speak to people, it's getting rid of tons of jobs, number one. And number two, it's just people don't have to think anymore. There's no need to think about anything. And I see people, they send me emails, like, I ask them something and like it has the whole AI rundown. They don't bother like thinking about this. They don't read the letter anymore. They just put into AI and they respond automatically. So this is what's happening in the world. And then obviously everything has a downside. It also has an upside. So B'ezrat Hashem, they said in a week it's going to be finished. Now, Mishle is divided into three. If you look here on the sheet, I wrote this up here. This is the introduction. Mishle is actually divided into three parts. Right? If you look at the first paragraph on the second page, he said that you need 3 svarim. There's so much material. So the Gra writes that from the first pasuk in Mishle to the first parak in Mishle to the ninth parak is one Sefer, and that talks about Chachma, with wisdom. Chapter 10 to chapter 24 is Musar, and chapter 25 to chapter 31, which includes chapter 30, which is Eish Chayil, is about Torah. Right? The Gra's opinion is that Eish Chayil is all about Torah. So again, this is quite incredible, and I'm just letting you know that this is on the way. I'm thanking everybody who is part of the shirim that it came about. The Gemara in Sukkah Daf Nun Beis Amud Aleph talks about the levaya of the Yetzer. There's going to be a levaya. The Yetzer is going to die. It's going to be destroyed. It'll be in a big levaya. And so at the levaya, they're going to need a mechitza. I would think but it's the levaya of the Yetzer. What do you need a mechitza for? The Gemara says that even after the Yetzer is gone, we're still going to have like Yetzer habits. It's going to become so ingrained in us. It's going to be habits. So even after Mashiach comes, we're still going to learn some Mishle.
Where we up to?
I was just reading the first paragraph on this page, the three Sefarim. Yeah, okay. But this is only an introduction, and so here, this is why it's so incredibly important to learn the Sefer. What the Gra did was basically he dissected the Yetzer. Any you ever dissect in your schools? They dissect things, like dissecting a frog or something like that. Like dissecting the Yetzer. Basically, what he says, it has 6 parts to it. The Yetzer. The first one he calls is the female part, the second is the male part, and the third is generic, right? So the female part, says the Gra, is called Taiva and Chemda. Taiva and Chemda. It's called female because it's a little bit more gentle. Taiva and Chemda. Like, you want to pass me those cookies for a second? Just want to. Now here we have a plate of like extremely enticing cookies. Like it looks really good. Okay, just now. Before Rabbi was Nefter, he told me, Rabbi Travis, he said, I want you to stop eating all cake, cookies, ice cream, sugar, Coca-Cola, everything, forever. I said, that's a little bit tough, one. I said, I'll take it on for the whole year except for Yantif. Yeah. So I don't feel so drawn to cookies anymore. But, again, on Yantif, I enjoy them. Taiva is something, it pushes us. It pushes us to eat and drink and sleep and do other things. Some of them good, some of them not good. But it's a push. The Gra is saying basically all 6 parts of Yesha are pushes. Like I remember growing up, there was I don't know if you call it restaurant because the food is so terrible. A fast food joint called McDonald's. You all know McDonald's, and in McDonald's there was something called a Big Mac attack. Familiar with Big Mac attack, right? You're suddenly like walking in the street and you're attacked. Like, oh, I must eat a Big Mac, and that is such a great commercial because it's mamish what happens. And so it's so accurate the way Taiva works, Like, okay, let's say I just had a big meal, I had supper, Do I really need to eat these cookies? I remember Entenmann's, you all remember Entenmann's chocolate chip cookies? They said you can't just eat one. You can't. I eat one, and then 2, and the box was gone. It's a whole shiloh, Birkas Hamazon, you have 4 Beitzim. Probably if you eat a box of Entenmann's cookies, you need to make Birkas Hamazon. It's 4 Beitzim. I think like 1 Baraka is maybe like a Beitzim, 4 of them. But the pshat is, it's an attack, and you feel like a push. And that's Taiva, it's physical pushes. Chemd is non-physical pushes, non-physical desires, like a fancy house, fancy car. I was once talking to one of my donors, and then we went outside, he had a car that cost $200,000. He said, that's my toy, it's my toy, expensive toys. But a really good guy, I have expensive toys. The need for prestige, for things, and it's like really a push, I go to some neighborhoods in America, and the houses, Rabbi used to say, he said, you don't need a Zeichel Chorban. The whole house is like, because it just looks like the base of Mikdash. It's just a little bit bigger than the base of Mikdash. Okay, I'm not sure that, a family with 2 kids and a dog needs such a big house with 25 rooms. But, so why do they do that? Because their next door neighbor has one, so they have to have it. Okay. Again, I'm not going to criticize anyone, Chas v'shalom. I'm just pointing out that a lot of times we're motivated by things which are not pure motivations, and it's really a push. Right? And I'll tell you when I really felt it. I've told this story before. I was once putting my tefillin away in the kollel, and a guy came to ask me directions, and I told him, said, "Excuse me, could you repeat that?" And suddenly I felt like this, right? Because the second set of Yetzer that the Gra says is called Kasani. The first one describes called Tavani. That's Taiv and Chemda, physical desire and non-physical pushes. And the second one is called Kasani, which is, he calls Raw and Birma. Raw is when, you just want to say something not so nice, violent, overly aggressive, even overly assertive. And this guy asked me for directions, I told him, and he said, "I'm sorry, I didn't hear that." And I suddenly felt telling him, "Are you deaf? Do you have ears?" I felt like saying that, but I felt it was like this. And I knew that was an attack. When we feel that way, it's like, now it doesn't usually come so, what is the right word? Strong. It's usually like very subtle. You could say like just one word slightly sarcastic. And if you do that, it means the Yetzer has got into your personality and it's been successful. The Yetzer doesn't look for big victories. The Yetzer looks for tiny, tiny victories. Yeah? A lot of tiny victories. Because it kind of like, what is it called? It threshes itself in your personality, And then eventually, like, you just become sarcastic all the time. You talk to people in a way, which is, not respectful, not dignified. Somebody who's sholen as Yetzer, right? Even when somebody, like, let's say someone's talking to him really rudely, right? I was in a car this morning. I went through a daven by Don Segel, and I had a big box of Yedidya books, and I had to put them in the car. And like I told him, I want to go to Mikveh Yisrael. So the guy heard, I said Mikveh Yisrael. The guy said, I'm taking you to Malchei Yisrael. I said, no, I want to go to Mikveh Yisrael. He said, but you told me Malchei Yisrael. I said, like, I'm really sorry. I said, Mikveh Yisrael. And I really shouldn't have said anything. I should have just apologized. But because I wanted to show this guy, like, he didn't, I'm right and you're wrong. He's telling me that I said, Mikveh, Malchei Yisrael, when I really said Mikveh Yisrael. One time I was 2 minutes late for a taxi. And the whole time he was screaming at me, the whole derech, right? And like about halfway, I remember we were getting to Rehov Givat Shal. I told the guy, listen, if you talk to me nicely, if I need to go to the airport, I need to go on a trip, I'm going to take it. He said, are you telling me how to drive my taxi? Okay, so there you go. So much for customer service. I once went into a store here in Israel. I said customer service. They're like cracking up. Customer service. Mechitesi. Anyway, but all of that, where's that coming from? Where's that coming from? Now, when my wife and I went together first time to America, we got to the Disney store in the airport, and they said, will the next guest please come up to the counter? And we were just shocked. Like, you mean us? Like, you don't. But in America, it's fake. In Israel, they're like, it's the real thing. They really pay to. But it is the Yetzer Hara. We're pushed by the Yetzer Hara to do things which are overly, I don't want to use the word violent even, which are not according to the dignity of the Torah. According to the dignity of the Torah, every word that comes out of your mouth should be thought out, dignified, building people, pleasant. And even if someone's talking to you, if the guy says, Malchus, I say, I'm so sorry, I didn't speak clear enough, I apologize. Next time I'll try to be more careful. Look, he feels good about himself, he's right, and who cares? Like, what difference does it make? Why do I have to be right? No, it wasn't Malchus Israel, it was Mikveh Israel. Next time, listen more carefully to your passenger. Like, why do I need that? It's a mistake. Right? So we have to be cognizant, and that's really what Mishle does. Is every single pasuk he's telling you another trick that the Yetzer Hara uses in order to entice you, and very, very, very subtle. So we talked about Chayiv, Taiv, and Chemda. We talked about Ra. The fourth one is Mirma, deceiving people. Deceiving people doesn't have to be an outright lie. It could be just like slight variation of the story. It doesn't really make such a big difference, but it's training you to lie. And that is another. So I actually, the Gra in one pasuk, he compares Taiv and Chemda, he calls them two evil women. And Ra and Mir were like two evil men. So I said, you have these four, your entourage, you have two men on one side, Ra and Mirma, and two women on the other side, Taiv and Chemda, and they're constantly like telling you, eat more, buy more things, say things not nicely, lie. And we're being bombarded by this 24/7, and the Yetzer Hara is always looking for the right opportunity to like slightly get one in, right? And to guide your actions based on that, right? Now, once we're cognizant of those four things, the last two are called gay and gon. That means has to do with gaiva. This is not on the sheet. We're getting to the sheet. It has to do with gaiva. Either you're better than everyone else, or everyone else should accept you as the ultimate ruler of the universe, right? But those are more subtle ones. The point is like this: we have these four entourage, two men and two women on our side at all time, and we have to be really cognizant. And unless you learn the Sefer, because the Yetzer has so many tricks he uses in order to like convince you that really, no, it's not really the wrong thing, it's really right. If I don't, I told this story I think once before. A bus driver closed the door on my foot, right? So I'm thinking like, what do I do now? Like if I scream, he's just going to scream back at me. I'm going to be stuck here. Like, okay, so Baruch Hashem, opened the door. And I got on the bus. He screams at me. He said, "You almost broke the door of my bus. Do you know how expensive I would pay such a fine?" I said, "I'm sorry." And I remember I said this once in one of the Mishle Shir on Shabbos. I told me, "No, you should stand up for your rights." And he's going to do that to somebody else, etc., etc. And We all feel that way, and my Rabbanim, the Gedolim Maboy, told me, it's not the right time. When someone's angry at you and like giving you whatever you want to call it, feedback on how stupid you are, it's not the right time to give them. It's not your job at that moment to give them Musar, number one, and number two, it's almost inevitably inviting the Yetzer Hara to like attack you, right? Because once you get into such a give and take, it's very, very hard not to get pulled in. It's really, really hard, and we have to like be 24/7 cognizant of this, that we're constantly under fire, right? And especially Ra. I used to think the Yetzer Hara is a misnomer. It shouldn't be called the Yetzer Hara. It should be called the Yetzer Mirma, because it's trying to deceive us. But I realized, can I have a glass of water, by the way? Just a glass of water. Right. The main thing the Yetzer Hara tries to do is in our Bein Adam L'Chavera thing. Is like in our Bein Adam L'Chavera, slip in these small comments, or even like it could even be like a wink or a body movement or something to get back at that other person, right? And look, the worse the person acted to you, the more susceptible you are to do something. Yeah.
On a practical level,
Right.
make it very, very tough. Or something else is very wrong. And that's why we're not able to speak so nicely, so gently, so pleasantly.
Yeah.
Let's be practical.
It's training, though, right?
Maybe we should say.
I said that before. The word amuna doesn't mean faith; it means training. It's the same thing here. If you understand, right? It's very hard if you're not in this whole picture to understand, like you're saying. But if you let's say Chas v'Shalom, we're in a war and Palestinians are coming and shooting. We realize that there's an enemy over here. The problem is that the enemy here is completely. The Gra says in one place, as a pasuk, Tov erech pa'im gibor u'moshel baruch lo kadir. Lo kadir says the Gra. The Yetzer Hara is like sometimes in an army you have the enemy taking the uniform of the other side, right? So imagine you know what uniform the Yetzer Hara wears? He uses your clothing, your face, your hat, your hair, your sheitel, everything. He looks exactly like you, or she, or MX today, right? For no gender. So, or it, right? And it says, really, you have to defend your honor. What, you're just going to let this person talk to you like that? It gives you all of these very seemingly logical arguments, which are just antithetical to Torah, right? Kol hakoyes kilo avodah avodah zara. And it doesn't say, how much. Of course, it's much worse to blow up than to say a few small words. But by getting you to say these words, it's like kind of training you, and then once you get married, your shalom bayis and your husband and your wife and your children, like all these things. Imagine if we could eliminate that from our personality. Like what an amazing life we would have, right? And it's a question of training. It's really a question of training. I'm coming home here, and my wife told me that Argentina is playing Egypt now in the Mondial. So I could tell the taxi driver was really impressed, And these guys, they're making, I don't know, $1 million, $2 million a year. Like, how do they do it? Because they train day and night. And that's for something stupid like, kicking a ball into a thing, you get $2 million, Imagine taking on the Yetzer Hara. It's certainly worth it, right? And the more you're cognizant of it, really, you're asking an excellent question. The answer to your question is, you have to nip it in the bud, as they say in England, right? You have to realize when the person says it to you that the Yetzer Hara is going to stop saying. So you have to try and say it's nothing to me. The person can say whatever they want. Okay, look, they're in a bad mood. They didn't learn Mishle with the Gra. They weren't so good to have the same teachers that I had, right? Maybe they had a very hard day, whatever it might be, and just kind of water off a duck's back, right? My Rebbe used to say that all the time, water off a duck's back. And recently I was by my daughter. I was looking at a certain book. It says the duck has a gland side of its neck which produces oil, and it puts it all over itself. So when it rains, the water just kind of cascades down. So that's when someone hurls insults at you, it's going to just cascade off, And okay, easier said than done. But if you without the Yetzer Hara, it will not bother. I promise you, it doesn't bother you the slightest, right? If you didn't have a Yetzer Hara, and we're not used to that because since we were born, we have a Yetzer Hara, right? But let's say it was somebody who it was a computer or something. It was a robot telling you that, or it was a child, or was somebody, with Down syndrome. We wouldn't be bothered, right? Because we realize that when we realize that the only thing causing us to get upset ever is Yetzer, so it's easier. And again, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, especially when somebody's really, really getting upset with you. But that's really the goal, right? The Vilna Gaon writes, the goal in life is really to work on one midah and to overcome the Yetzer Hara in all situations. And if you don't know what it is, so there's no way. So, and the Yetzer Hara is like such a win here, right? How many people are learning Mishle? It's almost nobody. So I'm hoping the book will come out and some people actually read it, and B'ezrat Hashem will have more ammunition to fight. Because look, if everybody's aware of this, it's much easier, right? If you're in a room of 20 people and they all realize that this is it, and somebody makes a mistake, so all 19 people are going to oh yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, they'll compensate for it, right? So this is really the more we can, how do you say this, diffuse this among society. So that's really the way Klal Yisrael is supposed to look. This is really the Groz describing, and it was Shlomo HaMelech really. Shlomo HaMelech was the Chacham Mikol Adam. He was the smartest person who ever lived, and the biggest intellect is needed in order to challenge the Yetzer Hara, because that is the ultimate battle. It's the ultimate battle because it's such a subtle, and like we said, he wears your clothing and he looks exactly like you, and he's talking to you and using very strong arguments. They're full of holes, by the way. Scheinberg told me, if you think for 1 second, you realize it's all a load of rubbish, right? But at the time, it sounds very, very, very convincing. So we have to really be careful. Okay. On that note, I want to jump straight to a pasuk. Okay. Let's start with pasuk Perek Vav, pasuk Kaf Gimel, because we're gonna. It's just like an ingenious growth today. How the Chorban HaMikdash, the destruction of Beis HaMikdash, can be a reason, give fuel to the Yetzer Hara. That would be the last thing you would think on planet Earth. We have the 3 weeks now, and we're mourning the Beis HaMikdash, and the Yetzer Hara can use that abelis on the Beis HaMikdash in order to get us to be choter. So let's look at Perek Vav Pasuk Kaf Gimel. Okay. Very short pasuk over here. A long footnote, but it says Kiner mitzvah v'Torah or v'derech chayim tochal masa. So you can see there's 4 things over here. Ner mitzvah Torah. We have mitzvahs and Torah and derech chayim. Right? We'll see what that is. And tochal masa. Says the Gra over here. There's 3 things. The Gra puts in 3 categories: Torah, mitzvahs, umidos. These last 2 things of derech chayim tochal masa, that is about midos. Shekol echad koilel mishulish lamala bliel. Okay, that's getting into more things which we're not going to see today. But we have these 3, which is really 4 main categories: Torah, mitzvahs, derech chayim, and tochal mosar. So now let's jump here to pasuk Perek Zayin pasuk Kaf. A few psukim later, Perek Zayin. And this is mamish incredible. Just see how incredibly smart the Yetzer Hara is and how tricky it is. And if you don't know these tricks, so you'll be pulled in, forget about it, right? The pasuk says like this. The pasuk says, "Ki sror kesef lakoch biyado, liyam hakesef yavo beis." Sror kesef, like a sror is like a chain of silver, right? You take in your hands. Sror kesef lakoch biyado, liyam hakesef yavo beis. For the day of the kesef, we're going to see what it is. Beis. So it says the Gra like this. Let's skip down here. Get to the Inyan. The Inyan. By me, it's the 3rd to last word on the page. It's 4 lines down. It says Ve'inyan. She'arba darkei Hashem sarach adamhem. You have that? You all have that? There are 4 things that we need. Ner mitzvah ta'or, derech chayim t'chachas moser. So there are 4 things that we need, right? And Torah, mitzvahs, Yira and Chachma. So the 2 things which the the Gra calls midos are yira, fearing Hashem, and chachma, and wisdom. Near mitzvah Torah or is Torah and mitzvahs. Derech Chaim is chachma, knowing how to, having the wisdom to live our life. Chachma tichias abala. Chachma gives life to its owners. V'yiri tuchachos musar. That's the musar. Now, listen to this. V'amalo Yetzer b'pituyav. The Yetzer Hara comes to tell you, she'al yisad libo, la'arbadron akshav. Just forget about these four things. There's no hope whatsoever. You have no hope learning Torah. You have no hope doing mitzvahs. You have no hope acquiring Yerushalayim. And you have no hope having any chachma, right? All the yeshivas and seminaries are closed down, right? Like, what's the point? Don't go to any shirim. Don't go to yeshiva. Don't study anything. Don't listen to any shirim because forget about it, okay? So how could the Yetzer Hara have the audacity to say such a thing? I mean, this is the pillars of Yiddishkeit. How is it possibly going to find ammunition to build and strengthen such an argument? So listen to this. Neged Chachma Amar, ki ein ish bebeso. There's nobody home. Yeah? Shebeis HaMikdash charav, v'kadosh Baruch Hu einu shochem b'tzion. Right? The Beis HaMikdash has been destroyed, and Hashem's presence is not in Eretz Yisrael anymore. Right? Shemisham bo chachma, kamo shekasev, va'avdu chachmi chachamav. So the Yetzer comes and says, look, you want to have chachma? You want to know how to live your life? It's completely impossible. There's no Beis HaMikdash. And there's always like a little bit of truth to what he's saying. And sometimes a lot of truth. The Gra says that, at the end of Shemona Esrei, we ask for the Beis HaMikdash to be rebuilt and to have Torah. Without the Beis HaMikdash, our level of Torah understanding is what do they call it? Lilliputian, whoever read Gulliver, what is it? Not Gulliver's Travels. What was it called? Gulliver's Travels. Yeah, okay. Anyway, it's very small. It's tiny. And so the Yetzer says, so don't even bother. There's no possibility to have any way to live your life today. Just forget it completely. Now, okay, look, he's using very strong arguments, which the Gra himself says. The Gra himself says that without the Beis HaMikdash, our level of Chachma is very, very small. So comes the Yetzer and says, so just forget about it. Now, so where's the flaw in that argument? What's the flaw? What do you say? I'll tell you the flaw is, because if you just forget about that, it's for sure over. In other words, there is some chachma left. I mean, there's still plenty of amazing shirim. There's still plenty of Torah to be learned. We still have Mishle with the Gra of Hashem, right? So the argument, while it may have very strong proofs to it, but it's just terrible, right? Because if you don't do anything about it, right, then you're for sure finished. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, right? We should just, since the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, just forget about it and just live your life without any chachma whatsoever. You'll just be destroyed. If the person doesn't think about what they do, just do just the way you feel. I think I've told this story before. I was at the airport, and there was a bacher who was trying to bring into Israel 3 tubes of Tom's toothpaste. It's a great toothpaste. OU, all natural ingredients. And they wouldn't let him on the plane. They wouldn't let it with his hand baggage because they only let you take under 50 milligrams, and it was 60 milligrams, whatever. So they confiscated toothpaste, and his mother was there. She had bought the toothpaste, and she just blew up. Her face was like red like a beet, and she was screaming and yelling. I had to go over to her and say, like, ma'am, I gave you some more toothpaste. It's terrible. But, if you just live your life without thinking. Now, a logical person said, okay, look, we tried. There's other good toothpaste. We'll try to get a replacement. Next time, don't put in your hand luggage. So you have to think about what you're doing, right? Or else you're susceptible to get so angry or do even worse things than that, right? So this argument that the Yetzer is using is extremely flawed, right? It's extremely flawed because if you just forget, there's no chachma. We have enough chachma to live our life today, like very, what do they say, ganz good, like fine, right? We're not perfect. We're not on the level that they were in the time of the Beis HaMikdash. But we have what we need. Okay, so that's the first argument. Number 2, what about Yira? Yira Shamayim, right? So says the Gra, Shaholach b'derech mirachok. Shira nimshach mi bina, right? Yira comes from bina. Yiras Hashem comes from insight from bina. Shmisham din misarim, and din comes from also from bina. Ubina nikras rochok, kamosh kosim. Mirachak Hashem nirali, v'akshvein bina. Ubina nivdas tistaster, right? It's the whole mirachak. Well, if you don't have chachma, the Gra says many places. Bina, chachma is when you present an idea. The pasuk we're reading now, that's chachma. And besides the Gra, there's, let's say, another 100 pshatim in that, 1,000 pshatim in it, right? The bina is, each pshat is a separate pshat. When you break something down into parts, that's bina. So the Yetzer Hara comes and says, without the base of English, no chachma. Without the base of English, no bina. So again, just don't bother trying to understand anything ever. Go to a shir and just like space out and just, you don't have to listen to anything. And I always say, bina is when you take the ideas and think, maybe I could do something about my life based on what I heard, Right? I was once going to give one of these citywide shirim for women in Lashon Hara. And I happened to meet Rabbi Chait. Rabbi Chait, it's for the one who's Rosh Yeshiva and Chavetz Chaim. And I said, maybe the Rosh Yeshiva give me advice, like what I should tell these ladies. He said, before you speak, wait 5 seconds. Just think 5 seconds. He said, you know what? It's too long. Wait 3 seconds. And he said, no, it's too long. Wait 1 second. Just 1 second. You're about to say something. Just wait 1 second. And you say, like, I really, is it like a vak lashon hara or just a complete lashon hara? Okay, it's destructive, harmful communication, which has no toils whatsoever. That's not so hard, to figure that one out. If you would just stop and wait 1 second, right? And that comes from bina. That's insight. That means taking something you heard in a shir, you read in a book, right? See, in Yedidya was like, we tried, the idea behind a book like Yedidya is a novel, is that it's all subtle. You're just like innocently reading this really well-written story, and like we're busy like channeling these ideas into your head, brainwashing you, which is good because our brains need a lot of washing today. They've been really soiled by American media. But and the more you could do that, the more you can make ideas part of you. And that's called das. Das comes from connection. Das is when it connects back to you. So Chabad, everyone heard of Chabad? Chabad is an acronym for Chachma, Bina, and Das. Every time you hear any piece of Torah, there should be a 3-step process. Chachma is just hearing it, Bina is thinking about it, and Das is connecting it back to yourself. Right? If you're not able to connect it back to yourself, then you didn't acquire it. Right? You go to a shir about Lashon Hara, or about Sinas Chinam, or Mishle with the Gra, the Yetzer. Say, so what? So how am I going to apply this to myself? And everybody's different. Everybody has different tchunos. My chavrusa just told me something incredible yesterday from Rav Sadik. What's his feet? Sadik. What was his name? They call it Rav Sadik Lublin. He says that don't ever judge anyone else. Why? Because you could have the most coarse, worst person in the world. The guy has terrible midas, but he's overcoming them a drop. And it's so hard, he's getting incredible reward. So you have the most nasty, crabby, seemingly terrible person, and that person is doing much better than everyone else. Because the way that they were created, they're being incredibly successful, And the point here is that you have to think, like, wow, if I was that person, how would I act? And that should affect the way you relate to other people, right? Again, whenever you hear something, it's chachma. When you think about it, is bina. And when you try to apply it back to yourself, that's das, that's chibur, and that's Chabad. Chabad really is about, and that's what they're really trying to give over, is about connecting back to yourself and to your actions. That's really what Chabad is really all about. Anyway, so we have 2 arguments from the Yetzer already. Forget about any chachma, right? And chachma and bina, that's what we're talking about. So you go to a shir, you hear something, don't even bother listening. It's a good chance to catch up on some sleep. You're not related to Rav Yosef Yaakov Herman, are you? No? Okay. Because I remember he writes in a book, and I just, they put out a little clip about him, Erev Shabbos, so I was thinking about him, right? His wife went to a movie, and he wasn't so happy about it, but she fell asleep. It's good for you, you should go to movies more. You catch up on extra rest, So I was in shul one time, and a guy told me, He said, my wife has so much Akarsa Tov to you. And I can even know the guy. I said, yeah, why? Because every night she puts on your shim and she falls asleep right away. I said, wow, thanks, Okay, so that must be because the Yetzer is helping, so it must be really good. But listen to this, what the Yetzer is saying. Don't listen to the shir, because that's Chachma. Don't think about the shir, because that's Bina. It's like, there's no hope then, right? And like the incredible thing is the Yetzer is telling you to do that because the base of English is destroyed. There's no point of listening to the shir because no base of English. And the speaker must obviously be dumb, and he knows nothing because there's no base of English. And Bina, to think about it, you'll never understand anything anyway because there's no base of English, right? These are such, and the funny thing is that it really works. It really works, these things. Okay, so what's the next level here? Sror Kesef Lok B'Yado is Neged Torah. Shnikrat Sror Torah B'Choli. Kolomar, Shatorah Chasuma Akshav. Right, it's finished. Afim Tegiyatz B'Chol Lo Teid. You won't understand anything. Ki Malka V'Sroim B'Goyim Ein Torah. This is Gra's famous pasuk. The level of Torah learning today is very, very small. So you can't have Chachma, you can't have Bina, you can't have Torah, and we finish off Liyama Kisei Yavu Beso. Leitza Kates Yachzer Yavu Beis. You'll come home at the time of the Kates, the Gula. Va'aziyeh mitzvahs v'shleimus, and then we'll do mitzvahs. When Mashiach comes, then we'll have mitzvahs. Akshav ain't mitzvahs noegas. Now he puts in b'shleimus Baruch Hashem. Right? Ulechein al tashas libcha lehem. She'akshav ain't af im tirdof achreim lo tasik. What can you do with mitzvahs today? Do you realize, like, without the base of English, we don't have any mitzvahs that have to do with Kohanim or Kabbanos of going to the base of Mikdash or the Chagim. So many things are not, or Tum and Tyra. So many mitzvahs are not Nogea today. And the Yetzer comes to us with these four arguments. There's no base of Mikdash, so forget about Chachma, forget about Bina, forget about Torah, forget about mitzvahs. Everything is gone. Yeah? And, okay, most people might not, their Yetzer is not so developed that cares so much about the base of Mikdash. But, they'll think, this speaker, like, just goes on, and he's talking about this and that, and he doesn't have a good delivery, he's not polished. So I'm just going to ignore what he's saying. Or I don't really think this guy knows what he's talking about. The Yetzer will always knows exactly what your weak points are, and it uses the exact arguments. I think that AI today, probably they know much more about yourself than you know, right? Because computers track everything you've ever bought, every shir you've ever listened to, everything, every website you've ever went, and they form an extremely accurate description of your personality based on that. And that's the mashal, right? The nimshal is the Yetzer. The Yetzer is with you from the time you're born. It knows everything you've ever eaten, everything you've ever listened to, every activity you've ever engaged in, and it knows exactly what to say to you to make you do an avera, and a very subtle avera. The Gra says the Yetzer is not going to tell you to turn a light on Shabbos because, you're not going to listen, right? But it'll tell you. The Gra says actually in this parak, if you turn one page back, right, 2 pages back, parak Zayin pasuk Daled. Look at this. In the Yetzer of Oladam liftoso lasas ver, the Yetzer will never get you to do an avera. You believe that? Kimi yishmalo, you're not going to listen to him. He's coming to tell you to do mitzvahs, right? And from that, you'll be nemshach to averas. And that's what this pasuk says. Zivchei shlamim alai, hayam shlami shlamasi nadai. You're coming to the base of Mikdash to bring a korban toda. It's like an incredibly great mitzvah. So what does the Yetzer do? He says, meat, that's really nice. So why don't you go to, go to Entrecôts? On Sunday you brought a korban toda, great. On Monday go to Entrecôt, or Tuesday. On Wednesday, go down from what is Entrecôt? I think is Rav Reuben. Go from Rav Reuben down to, I'm not going to say an extra so I won't get into trouble, but something which is less than Rav Reuben, Rav Reuben, by the way, I met him a year ago, unbelievable, Yerushalayim. Anything he touches, especially restaurants, they're afraid of him. Because Rav Reuben, could be very confident. But there are other heksherim, which are, they're fine heksherim, but they're not as good. And then there are other heksherim, which one Rav told me, I won't tell you on this film at least, what it was, but he said, it's cheskes treif, right? It's not suffix treif, it's body treif. And I can tell you this hechsher, I was once supposed to be a Rav in a hotel for Pesach. 2 weeks before the program said, we just got a crate of meat with a hechsher on it, and it's from an Arab town. It's kosher, but it's halal. It's not, it's not a kosher. Okay, So look, and it's all the Yetzer. Korban, Toda, Entrikat, less extra, and then the next step is you're not eating kosher at all. Again, and this is over a long, long period of time, very slowly, but that's how the Yetzer works. It always starts with mitzvahs and works it down to a way to Averas. So here we have the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, and so 3 weeks, and we're supposed to be mourning it. It's on our mind, right? And we're learning from the Gra that without the Beis HaMikdash, you don't have Torah. So now you have a decision. Okay, Rabbi, travel this year and move tonight to Sholson 48, and there are big bulldozers there in the street, and you have to get covered with dirt to get in, and can you see that apartment? Okay, so I'm not going to bother coming because anyway, it's the Beis HaMikdash story. There's no Torah, right? And again, each person, the argument is tailor made, and we have to be wary of that and understand when it comes that it's really just from the Yetzer. By the way, I'll finish with this point. The Gra says right at the beginning of the Sefer, the Yetzer always talks like a lot of passion. He says if you have a very strong passion to do something, it's by the Yetzer. That's why it says Rus, when Nomi tried to push right, she says mitametis level. She had to push hard to go. The Gra says she saw it from the Yetzer Tov, because the Yetzer tries to make things as easy and smooth as possible and get you passionate. If you feel like overly passionate about something, it's a very good chance that it's being influenced by the Yetzer, and you should look into it very carefully. Right? If you feel like kind of like, yeah, blase, maybe I'll go, maybe I won't go. It's very tiring, a lot of steps, I had to carry these 6 farm down all the way from Agassi, all the way down the steps. Maybe I just go to Ma'ariv and forget about this year. Okay, I wouldn't do that obviously because that would be embarrassing for me. Baruch Hashem, 8 for embarrassment is more than that. But, these subtle arguments, we're being bombarded by them. Literally bombarded. And everyone here knows Hebrew? Hebrew? There's an expression, you know Hebrew very well, probably, right? You ever heard Zelo fair?
Oh, yeah, we know that.
It's not fair, right?
Very.
It seems like it's not really fair that the Yetzer is doing that to us. But it is fair because any test you get, you're able to withstand it. And if you think for 1 second, like Rav Steinberg said, then you could overcome it. So that's the take for tonight. And again, a lot of times it won't work. A lot of times we'll just run into it. We won't think. But if even I made a Kabbalah, on Rosh Hashanah, it's always kedai to make a Kabbalah for the upcoming year. They should do one thing really, really chew on that really well. So my Kabbalah this year was, before I get to davening in the morning, I want to think about one thing. Just train yourself. Think about it. And I write it down on my phone before, I have a list of things. I write it down what I thought about, what I thought. And if you train yourself to think about it, you'll find a lot of things just by thinking about it, you change your mind. Because it was, clearly coming from the Yetzer. The Bali Musa really, this is one of their big things. If they were choshesh, that they were not doing something because they were lazy, they would walk to the place and then decide, right? Because maybe you're being pushed by the effort. Chazal say even Yaakov Avinu, he was choshesh. Maybe he's going down to Mitzrayim because they have better food there. They had Egyptian, restaurants there. I don't know what they serve there. Frogs, lizards, I don't know. Oh, that's China. But the point is, think about things to your best ability, and try to learn like the Yetzer's arguments. The more you learn it, the more sophisticated it's going to get. It's going to try to trick you on a higher level, and that's how you grow, right? By the ability to withstand more subtle nisyonos, that's really growth in Avodas Hashem. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, they were very against the Musar movement. And one time I was supposed to deliver a class. They had 50 sources posted on the board. And someone came right before the shir, and he switched all of them. Just random sources. Anyway, picks up the paper. He looks at it for 1 minute. And then he said a shir connecting all 50 unrelated sources. And they asked him, so why did you wait a minute? Because he's so smart. He said, I wasn't sure if that's Gaiva or not. That's what I was thinking about. To put the 50 things together, that was easy for me. But I wasn't Gaiva. So this is, again, that's a very high madrega. If we would get even close to that, we'd be lucky. But if you think, you're about to say something, taxi driver is like a wonderful opportunity, because even like there's some like really nice taxi drivers. If I find one, I put his number on my phone, and call them, as much as I can. But sometimes they're in a bad mood, and it's a good opportunity, Or let's say your friend calls you up and they're just fetching and complaining and this. Just listen to it. They might be criticizing you. Just listen, accept it, keep quiet, and these are really, really powerful ways. And that's the answer to your question. The answer to your question is you need to train yourself. There's no way if you don't train yourself, and that's why we're learning Mishle the Gemara, and that's why hopefully the book will come out and get the word out. Anyway, everyone should have a good week of Atzlacha and Bracha and Parnasa in health, Shalom Bayis, children, choosing seminaries, these things, or nothing. Yeah. Well, look, if you're going to go to seminary, you should go to Chedvas because that's the best one. I'm not biased because I teach there, and they give me a 10% cut for convincing. No, I'm kidding. But they're all good, And again, it's an interesting thing. Every seminary has like a slightly different twist, because they want to get the girls to come in. It's good that they have that. It's the same like Lahavdil. But the Yetzer, everyone's Yetzer has like a slightly different twist to entice you. And the Gra says that's your main avoda. Your main avoda is chapping your Yetzer. Like, what am I susceptible to? What do I need to put special attention and special work on? Okay. Anyway, Shalvi Matzliach.